My name is Brooke Lawson. I am 31 years old. Back when I still trusted my boss, Victor Kane, he had spent the last 3 years building me up at our Las Vegas marketing firm, only to set me up as the fall guy for his scheme. One ordinary afternoon last summer, I was pulled into what I thought was a routine promotion review, but instead found myself facing forged documents and accusations of embezzlement. The room full of executives watched as the evidence pointed straight at me while my boss sat there with that fake concerned look. In that moment, I realized the man who had mentored me had been planning to destroy my reputation to cover his own gambling debts and affair all along. But I wasn't going to crumble. I would fight back with everything I had to expose the truth. If you've ever had a boss you trusted completely turn out to be plotting your downfall, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from and how it felt when the mask finally slipped. I read every single one. The boardroom air felt thick enough to choke on as 6 executives leaned over the long mahogany table, their eyes flicking between the stack of printouts and my face. My boss, Victor Kane, sat at the head like he owned the place. He had called this emergency meeting himself, claiming it was about tying up loose ends on the new resort campaign. I had walked in expecting praise for the 30% revenue spike my team delivered last quarter. Instead, the head of internal audit slid a folder toward me and said the words that made my stomach drop. Brooke, these records show unauthorized transfers totaling $65,000 from the client escrow account. The digital signatures match yours. My hands went cold. I stared at the pages of forged authorizations with my name stamped across them. My boss leaned back, steepled his fingers, and gave me the same sympathetic head tilt he used when he mentored me through late nights. We all make mistakes under pressure, Brooke, especially with everything you've got going on at home. His voice dripped concern, but his eyes stayed flat. That was the first time I felt the knife twist. He knew exactly what he was doing. I had met my boss 3 years earlier at a company happy hour on the Strip. I was fresh off a promotion to marketing manager at the boutique firm that handled campaigns for 3 major casino resorts. He remembered my name, praised my ideas in front of the team, and then never once asked about my family money. My grandmother had left me $1.8 million in a trust, plus the family home in a quiet suburb outside the city. I kept it quiet, drove a 6-year-old SUV, and focused on my career. My boss seemed to respect that. He mentored me personally, gave me the biggest accounts, and pushed me to lead the campaign that would later become the firm's biggest success. We kept things professional on paper while he slid into my projects, claiming credit for concepts I stayed up until midnight perfecting. My mother, Diane Lawson, saw it immediately. After their first meeting at a family barbecue, she pulled me aside and whispered, "That man's smile stops at his teeth. Watch your back." I laughed it off. We barely spoke for 18 months after that. I chose loyalty to my boss over my own mother. Looking back, that silence hurt more than anything he would later do. 10 months ago, I found out I was pregnant. My husband and I had been trying for 4 years. The joy was overwhelming, but the timing coincided with my boss's behavior shifting. He started keeping his office door closed, during calls stepping out for urgent client dinners that stretched until midnight. I noticed receipts on his desk for dinners I knew he hadn't taken me to. When I asked about them casually, he laughed it off. Networking, Brooke. You're too hormonal to see how the game works. The word hormonal landed like a slap. I apologized. That was how good he was. The financial pressure came next. My boss began pushing me to add him as a co-signer on my biggest client contracts. For the team, he said, "What if something happens with the baby? I need access to keep the campaigns running." When I hesitated, he grew cold. He reassigned 2 of my key accounts without telling me. Late nights multiply. 4 evenings a week, he would text the team chat saying he was finalizing strategy while I sat at home rubbing my growing belly and wondering why my mentor suddenly felt like a stranger. My best friend Chloe Ramirez came over one weekend and listened while I made excuses for him. She set her coffee down and looked me dead in the eye. "Brooke, When was the last time your boss actually celebrated your wins instead of borrowing them? I couldn't answer. That night, I started noticing the small things. His phone face down. Password change. A text from an unknown number that flashed on his screen when he thought I wasn't looking. The switch is set. By spring, everything settles. I pushed the worry down. I was 5 months pregnant, building the campaign of my career, and convinced the man who had guided me for 3 years wouldn't sabotage me. Then came the emergency boardroom meeting. Natalie Ford, a senior colleague from the compliance side whose sister worked in finance, was the one who changed everything. She had been sitting quietly at the far end of the table during the audit presentation. When the head auditor finished listing the forged transfers, Natalie cleared her throat. Her hands trembled as she pulled a second folder from her bag. Before we go any further, I need everyone to see this, she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut through the room. My boss approached my sister 3 months ago. He offered her $45,000 to switch digital records on the escrow accounts. He told her it was just to protect the family situation and that I would never know. He needed someone inside to make the transfers look like they came from my login. The room froze. My boss's smirk faltered for the first time. Natalie kept going. My sister couldn't live with it. She kept originals, payment records, even emails where my boss bragged about how perfect I would be as the fall guy because of my family money and the pregnancy making me look distracted. He planned to wait until after the baby was born, then push for a full internal investigation. The company policy on misconduct means immediate termination would cause loss of all bonuses and a black mark that would follow me to every firm in Nevada. He would step in, take the clients, and walk away clean. My heart slammed against my ribs. I stared at my boss. He started talking fast, smooth as always. Natalie, this is ridiculous. Brooke's under a lot of stress. Pregnancy hormones, you know how it is. The words landed exactly like the ones he had used on me for months, gaslighting wrapped in fake concern. The pieces clicked, the late nights, the sudden interest in my trust fund details for estate planning, the way he cried during the last team off-site when he toasted family at work while his eyes stayed cold. He had researched me before I ever joined the firm. The happy hour where we randomly connected wasn't random. He knew about the trust. He knew about the pregnancy. He knew exactly how to frame me. But Natalie wasn't finished. She laid out more. My boss had $160,000 in gambling debts from private poker rooms off the strip. He had embezzled the $65,000 in small increments over 18 months. To cover it, he needed a scapegoat with a clean reputation and deep pockets. Me. There was more. He had been having an affair with his assistant for 9 months. Hotel receipts, texts, the works, and this wasn't his first time. 6 years ago, he targeted another marketing manager at a competing firm, Sarah Thompson. She had provided a statement once Natalie's sister came forward. The executives shifted uncomfortably. One of them, Marcus Reed from Audit, actually stood up and said, "Victor, we're pausing this meeting. HR is being looped in immediately." My boss shot me a look across the table that sent ice down my spine. It wasn't anger, it was calculation. Like he was already rewriting the story in his head, like he still believed he could win. I sat there with my hand resting on my belly, feeling the baby kick, and something cold and sharp settled in my chest. He thought I would fold. He thought pregnancy and shock would make me compliant. He had no idea who he had backed into a corner. That night, I drove home through the neon glow of Las Vegas Boulevard with my mind racing. I called my best friend Chloe first. She listened without interrupting and then said the words I needed. "You're not doing this alone. I'm coming over." The next morning, I reached out to my mother. 18 months of silence cracked open the second I told her what happened. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just asked, "What do you need, sweetheart?" That broke me more than my boss's betrayal. I hired a private investigator, Lena Harper, a former corporate fraud specialist who knew the casino industry inside out. Within 10 days, she had everything: payment records, the bribe finance colleagues' full confession, Texts where my boss joked about how easy it would be once the pregnant one takes the fall. There was even a second team member, Sophia Morales, who had been paid $22,000 to submit campaign ideas under my boss's name that were actually mine. The affair evidence was uglier than I expected. Photos, hotel bookings, messages that made my skin crawl. My boss had promised the assistant a promotion once I was gone. He had used my pregnancy as the perfect cover story Brooks too distracted to notice. I sat in Lena's office with the folder in my lap and felt the rage turn into something focused. My boss had spent 3 years building a trap. I was going to spend the next 3 weeks springing it shut. But I still had to go to work every day and pretend nothing had changed. I smiled at my boss in the hallway. I nodded through team meetings while he casually reassigned my biggest client. I even laughed at his joke about new moms needing all the help they can get. Inside, I was counting the hours until I could drop the hammer. One afternoon, I found Tyler Brooks, one of my direct reports, waiting by my car in the parking garage. He looked pale. "Brooke, I need to tell you something. My boss asked me to backdate some reports to make it look like you authorized the transfers. I said no, but I'm scared he'll come after me too." That was the second piece of the puzzle. Another ally, another recording. I recorded the conversation. Lena said it was gold. The pressure kept building. My boss started spreading quiet rumors in the office that my condition was affecting my judgment. He told Keith Donovan in HR that I had been erratic lately. Each day felt like walking a tightrope over a pit of snakes. I went home exhausted, rubbed my belly, and whispered to the baby that mommy was going to make sure we both had a future free of that man. Then came the text that nearly stopped my heart. It was from an unknown number, but I knew it was my boss. "Careful what you dig up, Brooke. Some secrets have a way of hurting the people you love most." Attached was a photo of my mother's house. Not a threat exactly, but close enough to make my hands shake. I forwarded it to Lena immediately. She replied in seconds, "He's panicking. That means we're close." I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, feeling the baby move, and made myself a promise. My boss thought he had built the perfect cage. He had no idea I was already holding the key and sharpening the blade. The next morning, I dragged myself out of bed before the sun came up over the desert, the baby, kicking like he knew something was wrong. I met Lena Harper at a quiet coffee shop tucked behind one of the smaller casinos on the west side of town. She slid a thick envelope across the table, her eyes sharp as ever. "Your boss has been sloppy, Brooke. $160,000 in gambling debts spread across 3 private rooms. The transfers he pinned on you. He routed them through a dummy vendor account he set up 6 months ago. And that's not all." She flipped open her notebook. The affair had been going on for 9 months with his assistant, Amanda Reyes. Hotel stays late, dinners, charged to company cards, texts where he promised her my job once I was handled. Lena had photos, timestamps, everything. Then she dropped the bomb about Sarah Thompson, the marketing manager from 6 years back at the rival firm. My boss had pulled the same move, forged expense reports, rumors about her instability, and a quiet payout to make her go away. Sarah had kept quiet out of shame, but now she was ready to talk on record. My mother drove in from her place across town that same afternoon. She didn't waste time with lectures. She just hugged me tight hand, resting on my belly, and said, "We fixed this together." No more silence between us. We sat at my kitchen table for hours, going over Lena's files. My husband came home early from his shift at the hospital, listened without interrupting, and then quietly started making calls to a friend who knew employment law. For the first time in months, I didn't feel completely alone. But my boss wasn't done tightening the noose. The very next day, he called me into his office right after lunch. He closed the door, leaned back in his leather chair, and gave me that same concerned smile that never reached his eyes. "Brooke, sit down. You look exhausted. Pregnancy really does cloud judgment, doesn't it? Or maybe it's all that family money. making you think you're untouchable. The words landed like ice water down my back. He knew exactly where to twist. I've been covering for you. The team's starting to notice how distracted you've been. Reassigning your accounts was for your own good. Wouldn't want the baby stress affecting deliverables. I kept my face neutral even though my pulse hammered. I'm handling my accounts just fine. He chuckled low and cold. Of course you are. But with the audit breathing down our necks, it might be best if you step back. Take some time. Focus on the pregnancy. I'd hate for your reputation to take a hit over a few careless mistakes. The sarcasm dripped from every syllable. He was daring me to push back, banking on the fact that a pregnant woman fighting her boss looked unstable. I left his office with my hands shaking, but I didn't cry until I reached the parking garage. My best friend Chloe came over that evening with takeout and listened while I replayed the conversation word for word. He's panicking, she said. Men like him always do when the mask slips. Tyler Brooks caught me in the hallway the following morning, glancing over his shoulder like someone might be watching. He pressed a small recorder into my hand. I recorded him yesterday after you left. He told me to backdate those vendor approvals and sign your name. Said it was team protection. I told him no, but I kept the audio anyway. Another piece clicked into place. I hugged Tyler right there in the corridor, whispering, "Thank you," while my heart raced. Sophia Morales, the team member my boss had paid off, reached out next. She met me and Lena at a park near my house after dark, looking terrified but determined. He gave me $22,000 to claim your campaign ideas as his own, she confessed. Told me you'd never notice because of the baby. I felt sick about it the whole time. Her voice cracked. I'll testify if it comes to that. I can't keep carrying this. Lena's updates kept coming in fast. The finance colleague Natalie's sister, Elena Vargas, had already given a sworn statement to the private investigator. The board was quietly opening a full internal review, but my boss was fighting back by leaking rumors that I was the one under investigation for financial irregularities. Keith Donovan from HR pulled me aside during a coffee run and warned me that my boss had requested an emergency performance review for me next week. He's framing it as concern for your well-being, Keith said, but it smells like a setup. The pressure built like a storm over the strip. I went to every prenatal appointment with my mother beside me, my husband holding my hand during the scans, but my mind never left the office. One night, my boss texted the entire team chat at 11 o'clock, big client presentation tomorrow. Brooke, make sure you're sharp. Wouldn't want anyone thinking the pregnancy is slowing you down. The message was meant for me alone, even though it looked innocent. I stared at my phone in the dark, the baby shifting inside me, and felt that cold determination settle deeper. Then came the anonymous tip. An email landed in the inboxes of two of our biggest resort clients claiming I had misappropriated campaign funds and that the firm was covering it up. No proof, just enough detail to make them nervous. Lena traced it back to a burner account linked to one of my boss's poker buddies. He was escalating, trying to force my hand before I could expose him fully. My mother saw the toll it was taking. She made me promise I wouldn't confront him alone. He's dangerous when cornered, she said quietly over breakfast one morning. But so are we. My husband stayed up late helping me organize every document, every recording, every statement. My best friend Chloe coordinated with Lena so I could focus on keeping my head down at work. Even Tyler and Sophia started feeding me small updates. My boss had been making frantic calls from the parking lot, voice raised, talking about damage control before the baby comes. I thought I had a few more days to line everything up perfectly. Then my boss scheduled an all-hands meeting for the following afternoon titled Team Integrity Review. The invite went to every manager and executive. In the notes section, he had written one line addressing recent concerns regarding account oversight. My name wasn't mentioned, but everyone knew. Lena called me the second she saw the calendar invite. This is it, Brooke. He's going to try to hang you in front of the whole department. I sat at my desk after the invite popped up. staring at the calendar. Heart pounding so hard, the baby kicked in protest. My boss walked past my office door a moment later, paused, and gave me that same cold stare. See you tomorrow. Brooke, try to get some rest tonight. You're going to need it. The words were light, almost friendly. The threat underneath them was anything but. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay beside my husband, replaying every sarcastic jab, every forged signature, every late night text. My boss thought he had me cornered, that the pregnancy and the lies would break me before I could strike back. He had no idea how many people were now standing behind me, ready to watch him fall. But as the clock ticked past midnight, my phone lit up with another unknown number. The message was short and chilling. Tomorrow changes everything. Walk away now or lose more than your job. Attached was a photo of my mother's car parked outside her house taken that evening. I forwarded it to Lena, immediately, hands trembling. She replied in under a minute, "He's desperate. We move faster." But as I set the phone down, the weight of everything hit me all at once. This wasn't just about clearing my name anymore. My boss had dragged my family, my pregnancy, my entire future into his mess, and tomorrow he planned to burn it all down in front of everyone I worked with. I closed my eyes and whispered to the baby, "We're not going down without a fight." But deep down, I already knew the fight was going to cost me something I might never get back. The next morning, I dragged myself into the office with my mother's words still echoing in my head, and that threatening photo of her car burned into my mind. My husband had kissed my forehead before I left, whispering that he would be on call if anything went sideways, and my best friend Chloe had texted me a string of heart emojis with the simple message, "You've got this." I sat at my desk pretending to review campaign notes while my stomach twisted into knots. The all-hands meeting was scheduled for 2 o'clock in the main conference room on the executive floor. My boss had invited every manager, every account lead, and half the support staff. The calendar invite still sat there like a loaded gun. I spent the morning quietly forwarding the last batch of Lena's evidence to Keith Donovan in HR and to Marcus Reed in audit. Tyler Brooks stopped by my desk under the pretense of asking about a file and slipped me a flash drive. "Everything I recorded from yesterday," he said under his breath. "He's been calling me non-stop since you left his office." Sophia Morales caught me in the break room and pressed the folded note into my hand. On it, she had written the exact amounts my boss had wired her and the dates he promised her a promotion once I was out. Both of them looked as scared as I felt, but they were standing with me now, and that gave me the strength to walk into that conference room with my head high. The room was already packed when I arrived. 24 colleagues milled around the long table, grabbing coffee and chatting like it was any other team update. My boss stood at the front next to the projector wearing the same tailored suit he always wore when he wanted to look untouchable. He caught my eye the second I walked in and gave me that same cold stare. My mother had warned me about men like him, and right then I finally understood what she had seen 3 years ago. My boss didn't waste time. The second everyone settled, he clicked the projector on, and the first slide appeared a blown-up screenshot of the forged transfer records with my digital signature highlighted in red. Team I called this meeting because we have a serious integrity issue that affects all of us, he began, voice smooth as silk. Some of us have been distracted lately. Pregnancy can do that, of course, but when those distractions lead to $65,000 vanishing from client escrow, we have to address it head on. Brooke, would you like to explain these authorizations to everyone before I show the rest of the evidence? The room went dead silent. Heads turned toward me. I felt the blood rush to my face, but I kept my voice steady. "Those aren't mine, and you know it." He chuckled low and condescending, the sound bouncing off the glass walls. "Come on, Brooke. We've all seen how stressed you've been. The late nights, the mood swings, the sudden interest in family time instead of closing deals. I've covered for you more times than I can count. But when it starts costing the firm real money and real client trust, I can't protect you anymore." His eyes flicked to my belly for half a second, just long enough to make the jab sting. Maybe it's time you stepped back and let the rest of us handle the pressure. For the baby's sake, if nothing else. The sarcasm in his tone was razor sharp, laced with that fake paternal concern he had perfected over 3 years. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but no one spoke up yet. My boss clicked to the next slide, this one showing a timeline he had fabricated that placed me alone in the system during every suspicious transfer. I've tried to be understanding. He continued, voice rising, just enough to sound wounded. I mentored her, gave her the biggest accounts, even looked the other way when her personal life started bleeding into the office. But loyalty only goes so far when someone's actions threaten the whole team. That was the moment Natalie Ford stood up from the back row. Her hands were steady this time. Before you keep digging that hole, everyone needs to see what my sister Elena actually documented. She connected her laptop and the screen filled with the real records, the original timestamps, the payment confirmations showing $45,000 wired from an account my boss controlled. Gas rippled through the room. My boss's face tightened, but he recovered fast. Nice try, Natalie, he said, voice dripping ice. But we all know how close you and Brooke have gotten lately. Office alliances can look a lot like collusion when the facts don't line up. He turned back to the group, gesturing at me like I was Exhibit A. This is exactly what I warned you about. Distraction leads to mistakes, mistakes lead to cover stories, and suddenly good people are being dragged into lies. I felt the knife twist deeper with every word. He was painting me as the unstable pregnant woman who couldn't handle her job, and he was doing it in front of everyone who mattered to my career. My mother's 18 months of silence suddenly felt like the smartest decision I had ever ignored. I opened my mouth to respond when Keith Donovan from HR cleared his throat from the doorway. He had slipped in quietly with 2 other executives I didn't recognize. Victor, we're going to pause this presentation, Keith said. The board has received new information and we're treating this as an active internal investigation. Brooke, you're not required to say anything further right now. My boss's smile never wavered, but I saw the flicker of panic in his eyes. He stepped closer to the projector, voice rising again. Of course, Keith. But before we all jump to conclusions, let me show you the part Brooke doesn't want anyone to see. He clicked forward, and a new slide appeared, this one with blurred hotel receipts and a grainy photo of me leaving the office late one night. These are the real distractions. Personal calls during work hours, unexplained absences, and yes, even questions about her trust fund that she brought up in team meetings. I try to keep it quiet, but when money starts disappearing, silence stops being an option. The lies were so smooth, so perfectly timed, that for a split second, even I questioned my own memory. Then Tyler Brooks stood up from the middle of the table. That's not true. I have the recordings where you told me to backdate those approvals and put Brooks' name on them. He held up his phone. Sophia Morales followed, right after, voice shaking, but clear. He paid me $22,000 to claim her campaign ideas as his own. He said the pregnancy made her an easy target. My boss laughed, but it came out forced. This is exactly what I meant. Alliances, cover stories, you're all letting emotion cloud the facts. He turned straight to me, eyes locked on mine, and delivered the sharpest cut yet. Brooke, I really thought you were better than this. I thought the woman I mentored had more integrity than to drag her entire team down just because she couldn't handle the pressure of becoming a mother. But maybe some people just aren't built for the kind of responsibility we carry here. The words hit like a physical blow. My hand instinctively went to my belly as the baby kicked hard, almost as if he could feel the venom in the room. Colleagues who had laughed at my jokes yesterday now stared at me with a mix of pity and suspicion. My boss had turned the entire meeting into a public execution, and he was still smiling like he had already won. Lena had warned me this moment might come, but living through it was something else entirely. I stood slowly, legs steady, even though my heart was racing. You've spent 3 years building this trap, but you forgot one thing. I'm not the only one who kept records. I pulled the flash drive from my pocket and held it up. And neither are the people you tried to buy off. Before anyone could react, my boss's phone buzzed loudly on the table. He glanced at the screen, and for the first time, his mask slipped completely. His face went pale. He looked back at me, and the calculation in his eyes turned to something colder. This isn't over. Brooke, he said quietly enough that only the front row heard. You have no idea what you started. At that exact second, the conference room door opened again. 2 men in suits I had never seen before stepped inside, followed by a uniformed security guard. Keith Donovan stood up straighter. Victor Kane, the board has placed you on immediate administrative leave pending full investigation. Please hand over your company devices and step outside with security. My boss didn't move. His gaze stayed locked on me, that same cold stare creeping back onto his face. You think you won? He whispered as security approached. Wait until the rest of the clients see what I have on you. Wait until they learn exactly how much family money you are willing to risk to cover your own tracks. The room held its breath. My mother's car photo flashed in my mind, the threatening text from last night, suddenly feeling like the opening move in a game I hadn't fully understood. My boss reached for his phone one last time, fingers flying across the screen while security waited. I didn't know what he was sending, but the look he gave me told me everything. He still had one more card left, and he was about to play it right now in front of everyone. My pulse roared in my ears as I watched him hit send. Whatever message had just left his phone, I already knew it was aimed straight at the one thing I couldn't afford to lose. The security guard reached for my boss's phone, but he was already sliding it into his pocket. Sir, devices stay with us during this process, Keith Donovan said, firmly stepping between them. My boss's fingers had already hit send. I felt my own phone vibrate in my bag almost immediately, and dread pooled in my stomach like ice water. Whatever he had just fired off, it was aimed straight at the clients who mattered most to my career. Before anyone could move, Lena Harper's number flashed across my screen. I stepped to the side of the room and answered on the first ring. He just sent a mass email to every major resort contact, she said, voice tight but steady, accusing you of the exact transfers he forged, claiming the firm is covering because you're pregnant and unstable. He attached doctored screenshots. But I had the board prep with the counter packet 2 days ago. They're already forwarding the real evidence to the clients and flagging his account for immediate lockdown. The room exploded into murmurs. Natalie Ford didn't wait. She stood again and played Tyler Brooks's recording on speaker. My boss's voice filled the conference room clear as day. Just backdate the approvals under Brooks' login. She's too distracted with the baby to notice, and once she's gone, I'll clean it up. Sophia Morales followed, voice shaking but clear. He paid me $22,000 to say her campaign ideas were mine. He said the pregnancy made her the perfect scapegoat. My boss's face finally cracked. This is a witch hunt, he snapped, voice rising. You're all letting a hormonal employee and her little alliance turn this firm into a circus? I built this team. I mentored her for 3 years, and this is the thanks I get. He turned to me, eyes narrowed into slits. You think you're walking out of here? A hero. Brooke. By the end of the day, every client in this town will know exactly what kind of liability you are. Security moved in. Keith Donovan read from his tablet, voice flat and official. Victor Kane, you are terminated effective immediately for violation of company policy on fraud, embezzlement, and misuse of company resources. Law enforcement has been notified. Hand over your badge and step outside. He laughed once, sharp and ugly, as they escorted him toward the door. Enjoy your victory lap, Brooke. Some of us have real bills to pay. The door clicked shut behind him, but the damage from his last text was already spreading. My phone kept buzzing, client after client wanting explanations. Even though Lena's team was countering every claim, In real time, the whispers had started. The marketing director who got her boss fired, the pregnant manager at the center of a scandal. The reputation hit, landed like a slow-moving bruise I knew would never fully fade. 3 weeks later, the internal investigation cleared my name completely. The board sent a company-wide email stating the matter was resolved and I had been the victim of misconduct. But the optics in a town built on appearances were brutal. Clients pulled back on campaigns. A few colleagues who used to grab coffee with me suddenly found reasons to be busy. Keith Donovan called me into his office on a quiet Tuesday afternoon and closed the door gently. "Brooke, the firm values you," he said, choosing his words like they were made of glass. "But with everything that's happened, we think it would be best for everyone if you took extended paid maternity leave starting now. Focus on the baby. Let the dust settle. We can revisit your role after the birth." He didn't say the word resign, but we both heard it. The irreversible loss settled over me right there. 3 years of building my career, the campaigns that had made the firm millions, the late nights I had given willingly, all of it reduced to a polite suggestion that I step away so the scandal wouldn't linger in the hallways. I nodded, thanked him, and walked out with my head high, even though my chest felt hollow. That evening, I told my mother and my husband over dinner at our kitchen table. My mother reached across and squeezed my hand. "You did the right thing, sweetheart. Some prices are worth paying to keep your integrity." My husband rubbed my back and said quietly, "We'll figure out the next chapter together. You protected our family." My best friend, Chloe, came over later with ice cream and reminded me that starting over pregnant was scary, but not impossible. Tyler and Sophia both texted separate messages of support, but I knew their careers would move forward, while mine had hit a wall I couldn't climb right now. 2 months before the baby arrived, I officially resigned. The firm gave me a decent severance and a neutral reference, but the Las Vegas marketing world is small. Word traveled. Doors that used to swing open now require extra explanations. I spent the last weeks of my pregnancy updating my resume, talking to recruiters, and feeling the quiet grief of losing the job I had once loved more than almost anything. My boss had lost his license to practice, and the state faced fraud charges that would drag on for months, and watched his reputation burn in the same circles he had tried to ruin me in. Partial victory tasted bittersweet on my tongue. He was gone, but the cost was mine to carry. My son was born on a quiet October morning, healthy and loud, with my mother in the delivery room holding one hand and my husband holding the other. The first time I held him, I whispered that I would always choose truth over comfort, no matter what it cost. My best friend Chloe brought balloons. Tyler and Sophia sent flowers and a card that simply said, "Thank you for standing up." Even Natalie Ford dropped by the hospital with a small gift for the baby and a quiet apology for how long it had taken everyone to see what my boss really was. The months that followed were slower than I expected. I interviewed from home while the baby napped, landing a part-time consulting role at a smaller agency across town. The pay was less, the prestige lower, but the environment was calm. My mother and I talked every week now, rebuilding the 18 months we had lost. She never once said she had warned me. She just showed up. That was the real win I held on to when the old doubts crept in late at night. My boss tried one last desperate move from outside the company, a vague social media post hinting at unfair terminations that a few people connected to me, but by then no one cared. His gambling debts caught up with him in the press coverage of the charges. The affair with Amanda Reyes ended messily when she realized he had nothing left to offer. Sarah Thompson from 6 years ago went public with her own story, adding another layer to the case against him. He would spend the next several years fighting legal battles he couldn't win. I sat in my new home office one afternoon, baby sleeping in the bassinet beside me, and realized the lesson had settled deep in my bones. Trusting the wrong mentor almost cost me everything but choosing myself, even when it meant walking away from the career I had built, gave me back something I could never have bought with any promotion. Family isn't the corner office or the biggest accounts. It's the people who stand beside you when the trap snaps shut. Some victories leave scars, but they still count. Thank you for listening to my story all the way through. It still stings a little when I drive past the old firm, but I wouldn't change how it ended. Have you ever fought back against someone in power only to realize the real cost was the life you had to leave behind? Tell me in the comments if you've ever had a boss or coworker turn on you like that and what you lost along the way. I read every single one, and your stories remind me I'm not alone.